I'm 28 years old, and my sister Rachel is 31. Our relationship has always been okay, not super close, but we got along fine at family events and exchanged occasional texts, as siblings often do. Our dad is quite successful, having built a prosperous construction company from the ground up. 8 years ago, our mom passed away from cancer. About 6 months ago, Dad started talking about updating his will. It wasn't anything dramatic. He just wanted to make sure everything was organized, possibly by setting up trusts. For someone in their early 60s, thinking about retirement and legacy is pretty normal. As his only children, Rachel and I would naturally split his estate. But since those discussions began, Rachel's attitude toward me has shifted dramatically. She went from being a typical sister to acting strange and distant. She started making odd remarks about how I don't belong in the family, claiming I've always been different. It started at a family dinner at Dad's house. Rachel was looking at old photos on his mantle and lingered on a picture of me as a newborn. She stared at it for too long before saying, "You know, you don't really resemble Mom or Dad in this photo." I brushed it off. Newborns all look like squished potatoes, right? But she pressed on. "Look at your nose, your eyes," she said, holding the picture up to my face. "Where did those features even come from?" Dad was in the kitchen, out of earshot, but I was starting to feel uneasy. I told her she was acting weird and that plenty of kids don't look exactly like their parents. Genetics are complex. Sometimes you get your great-aunt's jawline or your cousin's eye shape. But Rachel gave me this look, like I was hiding something. What's worse, she started spreading these comments to other family members. At our cousin's birthday party last month, I overheard her telling our aunt she'd always felt something was off about me. When she saw me listening, she didn't even seem embarrassed. She just shrugged and walked away. Her behavior got stranger when she became fixated on family genetics and inheritance. She kept sharing stories about people discovering shocking truths through DNA tests, sending me multiple articles about adoptions or unexpected paternity results. She'd go on about how DNA doesn't lie, and how science reveals true family ties. Last week, she cornered me at Dad's house and asked if I'd ever thought about my real parents. I was stunned and asked what she meant. She said she'd been reflecting on family lineage lately and how I didn't seem to fit with the rest of the family. I tried talking to Dad about her behavior, but I didn't want to sound crazy by going into too much detail. I just mentioned that Rachel seemed stressed and was saying odd things. He said he'd noticed she was more intense lately, but thought it was work-related. What's disturbing is how convinced Rachel seems of her theory. She doesn't come across as malicious or trying to cause trouble. She genuinely believes there's a big secret about my origins. But I know I'm Dad's biological son. I have his hands, his laugh, and his habit of getting frustrated with malfunctioning gadgets. I've got Mom's stubborn streak and her weird double-jointed thumbs. I resemble both of them in different ways. I'm starting to wonder if Rachel is having a mental health crisis. The timing of Dad's will update feels too coincidental to ignore. Is she so worried about the inheritance that she's convinced herself I'm not family? Could this be a delayed reaction to Mom's death? I'm at a loss here. Rachel's behavior is only getting worse. She started making comments about DNA testing and finding the truth in front of Dad. He laughs it off, but I can tell he's starting to notice something's wrong. Any advice? Update 1. Remember how I said Rachel was obsessed with DNA testing and family lineage? Well, she's turned her fixation into a family project. A few days after my initial post, she showed up at Dad's house with a full presentation on genealogy and ancestry research. She'd printed out articles on DNA testing, family tree mapping, and genetic heritage. She pitched it as a fun group activity where our extended family could build a detailed family tree using DNA analysis. Her presentation was polished. She'd researched various testing companies, compared their accuracy, and reviewed their databases for ancestral data. She talked about connecting with distant relatives, tracing family migration patterns, and solving mysteries about our great-grandparents. Dad was hooked instantly. He's always been into family history and wanted to explore our roots. Rachel knew exactly how to appeal to him, mentioning how we could uncover links to historical figures or learn about ancestors who came from Europe. But here's what gave me chills. Rachel insisted everyone participate to make the project complete. She said DNA comparisons only work with samples from multiple generations and family branches, emphasizing that Dad and I needed to be involved as the direct male line. She made it sound logical and scientific, talking about how advanced DNA testing could reveal surprising family connections. She framed it as a special gift for Dad, a beautiful family tree for his next birthday, complete with DNA results and historical research. She sold it as a heartfelt gesture to honor his love for family history. Dad loved the idea. He started talking about how Mom would have enjoyed this project and how exciting it'd be to fill in gaps in our family story. He agreed to participate and began reaching out to relatives to get them involved. Rachel took charge of everything, ordering test kits and coordinating with family members. She appointed herself project manager, insisting on collecting all samples herself to ensure they were handled properly and sent to the lab. Within a week, she'd gotten commitments from Dad, me, 2 aunts, 3 cousins, and Dad's elderly uncle. Everyone was excited about the project. Our aunt even started digging through old photos and documents to contribute. But I know what Rachel's really after. She doesn't care about genealogy. She's trying to prove I'm not Dad's son. She's convinced that when the DNA results come back, mine will show I'm not related to the family. Instead of accusing me outright or talking to me privately, she's orchestrated this elaborate scheme to look like the dedicated daughter while putting me in a position where I can't refuse to participate without seeming suspicious.
If he object to the test, il look like I'm hiding something. If he call out a real motive, il sound paranoia.
She's backed me into a corner, and my only option is to go along with her plan and hope the results prove her wrong. The worst part is seeing Dad so excited about it. He calls me every few days with updates Rachel's shared about genealogy research or possible family connections. He has no idea his daughter is using his passion to try to disprove that his son is his biological child. I keep telling myself this will blow up in her face when the results confirm I'm Dad's son, and hopefully, she'll drop this obsession. Update 2. Rachel was in charge of the test kits, so they were delivered to her apartment. She texted our family group chat that she'd received them and would distribute them for everyone to provide samples. She said she wanted to collect them all at once and send them to the lab together to ensure they were processed as a batch. I was supposed to pick up my kit yesterday, but a work issue came up, so I texted her I'd come by today instead. She said that was fine and would leave it with her roommate if she wasn't home. I went to Rachel's apartment this afternoon. Her roommate let me in and said Rachel was out running errands but had left my kit on the kitchen counter. There were 2 kits on the counter, so I grabbed one and was about to leave when I noticed the box was already opened. That seemed odd. Test kits are supposed to be sealed until you use them. I checked inside to make sure everything was there, and that's when I saw the saliva collection tube already had spit in it. I stared at it for a solid 5 minutes, trying to process what I was seeing. The tube was supposed to be empty for me to provide my sample, but it was already filled. At first, I thought Rachel had accidentally given me someone else's completed kit. Maybe a relative's sample got mixed up. But then I checked the paperwork, and my name was on every form. That's when it hit me. Rachel was planning to submit someone else's DNA under my name. I called her immediately to ask what was going on. She sounded confused and asked what I meant. I told her the tube already had saliva and the forms had my name. There was a long pause. Then she laughed and said it was a prank. She claimed she was testing me to see if I'd notice and was impressed that I did. She said she'd put her own saliva in the tube as a joke and had my real kit ready. I told her it wasn't funny. Tampering with DNA samples is serious. She kept insisting it was harmless fun. When I got home, I thought it over and called her again, demanding to know whose DNA was in the tube. She tried to brush it off, but I pressed her. Finally, she admitted she'd asked her friend Clara, a coworker I've met maybe twice, to provide the sample. Clara has no relation to our family. If her DNA was submitted under my name, the results would show no genetic connection to Dad or our relatives. I confronted Rachel about why she'd do this. What was she trying to achieve? That's when she dropped the prank excuse. She said she needed to know the truth about my origins and was protecting Dad's interests. She argued that if I was really his son, I shouldn't be afraid to take the test properly. But if I was hiding something, this would expose it. Her reasoning made no sense. I explained that submitting someone else's DNA would only prove Clara isn't related to our family, which we already know. It wouldn't say anything about my actual genetics. But Rachel wouldn't listen to reason. She insisted I was hiding something and that my reaction to her scheme proved I was scared of the truth. She said if I was truly Dad's son, I'd have no issue taking the test legitimately. I told her I'd take the test properly, but wanted a brand new kit she hadn't touched. I said I'd order my own kit directly from the lab and submit it myself to ensure no tampering. Rachel got furious, accusing me of being paranoid and ruining the family genealogy project. She said everyone was excited about it, and I was spoiling it with my suspicious behavior. I pointed out that she was the one acting suspiciously by trying to submit fake DNA, but she kept deflecting, calling me overly dramatic. She hung up when I said I was going to tell Dad what she'd done. She quickly texted me, begging me not to involve him and promising not to mess with my real sample if I dropped it. I'm not dropping this. Rachel tried to commit fraud by submitting someone else's DNA under my name. This goes way beyond weird suspicions about my parentage. I ordered my own test kit from the lab today. I'll submit a legitimate sample and get results that prove I'm Dad's son. Update 3. The DNA results came back, and I'm definitely Dad's biological son. But Rachel's reaction to the proof has been completely unhinged, and I'm seriously worried about her mental state. I got my results first since I ordered my kit separately, while Rachel was still organizing the family batch. The results showed exactly what I expected, a 50% genetic match with Dad, clear connections to our aunts and cousins, and ancestry that aligns with our known family history. Everything checked out perfectly. I was relieved to have scientific proof of something I'd never doubted. I hoped this would end Rachel's bizarre adoption theory and let us move past this mess. I decided to show her the results first, thinking it'd give her a chance to admit she was wrong and maybe apologize for her accusations and sabotage. That was a mistake. When I showed her the results, she stared at them silently for a long time. Then she started questioning the testing process, where I got the kit, how I submitted the sample, whether the lab could have mixed things up, if anyone else handled my kit. I explained I'd ordered it directly, submitted it myself, and tracked the process to ensure no errors. The results were solid. Rachel then accused me of rigging the test. She said the results couldn't be right because she knew I wasn't Dad's son. She claimed I'd somehow manipulated the process. I asked what evidence she had for thinking I wasn't Dad's son, and she listed absurd things. I hold my utensils differently than Dad, my laugh seems fake around family, and I'm too eager to fit in, which she says proves I don't belong. It's irrational reasoning. She's turning normal behavior into evidence of some grand deception. It gets worse. Rachel now insists everyone retake their DNA tests at a different lab. She claims she doesn't trust the company we used and wants independent verification from another provider. She's been calling. Rachel's already ordered new kits from another company and is organizing the collection process again, which worries me after her last stunt. This time, I'll make sure Dad's present when I submit my sample, and I'll document the sealed kit to track everything. The frustrating thing is I know the new results will just confirm I'm Dad's son, because I am. But Rachel seems convinced a different lab will support her theory. I'm starting to think she has a mental health issue fixated on my parentage. She's built this conspiracy and rejects any evidence that contradicts it, assuming the evidence itself is wrong. I want to tell Dad everything, but I'm worried he won't believe me. Rachel's behavior seems so reasonable on the surface that my claims might sound crazy. She's careful not to voice her adoption theory in front of Dad. My best bet might be to go through with the second test and let the results speak for themselves. When another lab confirms I'm Dad's son, Rachel will have to face the fact that multiple tests say the same thing. This has gone from annoying to deeply concerning. I'm not just dealing with sibling rivalry or inheritance worries anymore. I think Rachel's having a psychological crisis and is obsessed with proving I'm not family. Update 4. I told Dad everything, and Rachel is out of my life. This whole situation exploded in ways I never imagined, and I'm honestly glad it's over. The second round of DNA tests came back with the same results as the first. Shocker, right? I'm still Dad's biological son, genetically tied to our relatives, with the same ancestry markers. The results were essentially identical to my first test. I thought Rachel would finally accept reality when faced with matching results from two labs, but she doubled down harder than ever. She started researching DNA test accuracy, digging up obscure articles about lab errors. She claimed both labs made the same mistake or that my samples were somehow contaminated. But she hit a breaking point when she started contacting family members directly with her adoption theory. Before, she'd kept her suspicions subtle, but after the second results confirmed I was Dad's son, she abandoned all caution. She called our cousin Ethan and told him she had serious doubts about my origins, claiming Dad was deluded about having a biological son. She asked Ethan to help convince Dad for a third round of tests at a lab she'd personally select and oversee. Ethan was baffled and called Dad right away, saying Rachel seemed to be having a breakdown over family DNA and making wild claims about me being adopted. Dad called me soon after, asking what was going on. I realized I couldn't keep covering for Rachel anymore. She'd escalated to dragging extended family into her delusions, and Dad needed to know what his daughter was doing. I laid it all out, her months of strange comments and adoption hints, her manipulation of the genealogy project, and her attempt to sabotage my DNA test. Dad listened in complete silence. When I finished, he paused for a long time and said, "She's been trying to prove you're not my son. Why would she do that?" I explained it seemed tied to his will update, and Rachel was likely trying to cut me out of the inheritance. Dad went quiet again and said he needed to talk to Rachel immediately. The confrontation with Rachel was a disaster. Dad called her to his house and asked point-blank if she was questioning my parentage and trying to prove I was adopted. She denied it at first, but when Dad brought up the DNA tampering and her calls to relatives, she couldn't keep lying. She admitted she didn't believe I was Dad's son and had been trying to prove it for months. She said she was protecting Dad's interests and ensuring his inheritance went to his true child, claiming she was acting out of love and loyalty. Dad asked what evidence she had, and Rachel repeated the same nonsense she told me, stuff about my childhood behavior and how I didn't fit in. Dad told her it was absurd and that she was trying to ruin her brother's relationship with his family based on baseless obsession. He said he was ashamed of her and couldn't understand how she'd let herself become so cruel. Rachel broke down, insisting she was right, that the DNA tests were wrong, and that Dad was being deceived. She begged for one more round of testing at a lab she'd verify herself. That's when Dad lost it. He told her she was delusional and that her fixation on disproving my parentage had destroyed our family's trust. He said he couldn't trust her anymore and didn't want her around until she got professional help for whatever mental issues were driving her behavior. Rachel left Dad's house that day and hasn't spoken to either of us since. She's blocked my number and social media accounts. She's apparently blocked Dad too. His calls go to voicemail, and his texts don't deliver. Dad kept asking why I didn't tell him about Rachel's behavior sooner. I said I hoped she'd snap out of it and didn't want to cause family drama over what seemed like temporary paranoia. But Dad said he was glad I finally told him because Rachel's actions were escalating and could have gotten worse if left unchecked. Dad's decided Rachel needs professional mental health help before he'll consider rebuilding a relationship with her. He's told her, through other relatives, that he'll cover therapy costs if she's willing to address what's driving her behavior, but he won't allow contact until she acknowledges her adoption theory was delusional. As for me, I'm done with Rachel permanently. I don't care if she gets help or apologizes. She spent months trying to undermine my relationship with my father and erase me from my own family. She tried to commit fraud by submitting fake DNA samples in my name. She dragged extended family into her campaign against me. Dad's mentioned he's rethinking parts of his estate planning. He hasn't shared details, but I suspect Rachel's inheritance status has changed significantly. He said trust and loyalty are key factors in how he views family legacy. Some might say I should forgive Rachel if she gets help and apologizes, but I'm not interested in reconciliation. Some betrayals cut too deep to move past. She tried to wipe me out of my own family. That's not something I can forgive.